13 times. The Medal of Valor Championship has changed hands 13 times. Rot and decay 13 times. Disrespected. And I will make sure that everyone understands the meaning of the word valor. Valor is in Mother's hands. This is what I dream. This is my reality. This is what I dream. What I will to be. Dream and dream.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of On the Mic with Mike. I am your host, Mike Larkin, and joining me today is Pro Wrestling's darkest hour, Miss Mother Endless. Mother Endless, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
Greetings. I am well, and yourself?
I cannot complain. First and foremost, I am looking forward to, for those who have not seen it, Invictus Wrestling, we have episode 2 of the Women's Championship Tournament. You are taking on Abby Jane. Now, she's a ray of sunshine. You're the darkest hour. I'm looking forward to see how that contrasts and really what we get with that matchup. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. It was certainly an interesting thing to be invited to the tournament in the first place. And then, of course, when I saw my first opponent, I had to chuckle a bit to myself. However, Abby Jane has a little more fortitude than even I expected.
I look at it from a stance too, like we have so many meshes and we have so many styles in professional wrestling. Obviously, there's yourself with the entrance and the overall grandiose that we see with how you apply your craft. And then there's Abby Jane. She's got the smile. She's got the overall exuberance, if you will. Sometimes, opposites do attract, as that one Paul Abdul song once sang. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? I'm interested to see where this goes. It's kind of terrifying, but, it's something that gravitates towards me. I think a lot of fans are really going to enjoy this bout.
Oh, there is much to enjoy in the match. I look forward to all seeing it.
I look at it from a stance too, like you've done a lot of great work with so many various promotions. Like for you, we see a lot of great women in professional wrestling. We see a lot of great professional wrestling in general. I think it's a great time for a lot of fans to be fans of professional wrestling because we have you on the come up. We have so many talents. I think for all the wrestling fans, it's a treat just to see so many different characters, so many different styles. It's really a fun time for professional wrestling in itself.
It absolutely is. It most certainly is an interesting time with many opportunities, particularly for women competitors. And that's something that makes me very happy indeed.
Now, I have to ask you first and foremost with Mother Endless here. We have the dark arts. We have so many darkness involved from your entrance until you get into that ring. I got to say, like I was talking about gravitating towards a lot of characters, and I see someone like yourself. It's something that we see in professional wrestling that's different. That's something that's new. That's something that's fresh. And it's really with what you do and what you do with your in-ring style. What I love about it too is like I just saw your match with Vita Von Star for Star Pro, which by the way, congratulations. That's a great mix with you and Vita Von Star, the Righteous, Ring of Honor. There's so many great things that really are encompassed with that bout that you two absolutely killed it.
Gratitudes. She was someone that I very much looked forward to facing, and I was most certainly happy in the direction that match went.
I must say, first and foremost, like I say, congratulations there, adding more gold around your waist, because again, from the gold standpoint, you're kind of like a magnet, if you will, just getting golds right to you. Like there's no way that you cannot have gold, because it's one of those stances too. It's like with someone, again, with your competitor, with your overall style, championships just seem to gravitate towards you.
Absolutely. I think anyone would look at me and know that I am someone that needs to be adorned.
And first and foremost, I also look at it from a stance too. Like, again, we talk about the dark persona and everything that's encompassed with it, like with the blood, with the mask, every detail about you. What I also do enjoy is like, it's one of those things where it's like, you're in our faces and you want us to be in your face. Like, here I am, this is me. That's what I also appreciate about you, because you're just right up in the mix.
Absolutely. And I think that is something that pro wrestling really is all about. It's something that pro wrestling allows every individual who participates in it, as well as the individuals who observe it, to become that feral part of themselves or explore that more animalistic part of themselves, to really be that true animal that we each are underneath the faces that we present to the world.
I look at it from a stance too, like it's an old saying. It's very cliche, but it's very apropos in this day and age, and just in all every walks of life. Everyone has like that dark side to them. It's just them with the volume turned up. But it's one of those things. It's like sometimes we got to let that darkness out, and we see a lot that absorbs and comes from it.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that the human race overall would be a much healthier place should we all allow ourselves to do so.
I mean, I'll add on to that, mother endless. It's kind of like sometimes you just got to watch the world burn, and sometimes you got to burn it down.
Indeed.
Now, another thing I got to ask you, because first and foremost, I've seen you do a lot of great work with Valor and CZW Dojo Wars, like Dominic De Niro, Aaron Ash, Keenan. It's one of those things where it comes to what we see with that group taking over CZW Dojo Wars, DJ Hyde. I've seen a lot of great matches from the team and yourself there. I wanted to ask you about CZW Combat Zone Wrestling. Great promotion with great wrestling. The violence turned up and a lot of great brawls and a lot of great chaos and combustible elements, if you will. I wanted to ask you about CZW as a whole.
It is a place that I have found a home in, and so appropriately for who I am. And although it is something that has been shrouded in mystery throughout the past year, I think that soon both fans and interested individuals will come to see the light of what the future of CZW is.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Like again, from its inception to so many names that we've seen come there, from guys like John Moxley, from guys like Sammy Callahan, and now the Team Valor. I gotta say this: Dominic De Niro, Aaron Ash, and Keenman. It's one of those things. Like with you by their side, and just in general, we have so many great talents there. And I look from them. From what they've done with all that they've accomplished with the Dojo Wars and the medals and the Valor title, if you will. It's one of those things where you guys are a force to be reckoned with. And look at them, just like to see flourish is absolutely amazing.
Gratitudes. There is certainly much to be said for each individual, as well as for us working together as a team. While it might not be the team that you would expect for me to be the head of, it most certainly has found me much reward.
I think that's also what's great about you too, is because I'm going to say right now, the Black Arts match and everything that's encompassed that you did with Anastasia Morningstar and just the Dark Arts brawl, if you will. I wanted to ask you about that too, because my goodness gracious, you both tore it down, and it's one of those things for those who have not seen it. It's something to witness because you two beat the living hell out of each other.
Absolutely. One of my favorite matches that I have had in pro wrestling thus far. And I have nothing but respect for Anastasia Morningstar. And I also hope that she and I shall meet again because me and Mr. Crow have some unfinished business.
That you do, and it's one of those things too, like, and we were talking about like with Vita and just everything. It's one of those things where like you always have like great matches, and you always have that thing where again the chemistry is there, and it's one of those things, whether it be a dark arts brawl, it's one of those things where it's like it's an art form, and you get to add a new layer to what you do and get to push the other your opponent just to get to see what we get to see that dark out of them. So it's very like it's a psychological warfare, if you will. You know what I'm saying?
It absolutely is. And that is one of the things that pleases me most about pro wrestling, although it is so distinctly physical and pushes your limits of physicality. It is something that many people who observe it may not realize how psychological it is, that your edges may come to you above your opponent just by being able to get that psychological edge.
Hey, I will say this, besides like the dark arts and the voodoo and everything that's encompassed with the supernatural, if you will, and the darkness, if you will, I look at it from a stance too, like with yourself, like we were talking about the psychological aspect. It's kind of like if you have your gaze and your eyes, your piercing eyes, if you will, and I mean this with the utmost sincerity and respect, it's one of those things. It's like you can make the world tremble just with your gaze.
I do appreciate that respect.
Hey, I gotta say right now, it's one of those things too. I mean, they say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I'll be honest with you, I did see that Mother's Day message of yours. Mother may I, mother knows best, indeed, on that front.
Absolutely. There are very few who can hold a candle to Mother Endless.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly on that. And it's one of those things too, where we've seen a lot of people push you to your limits. And it's one of those things where, again, when you go to CCW Dojo Wars, when we're talking about Invictus here, we're talking about so many promotions. I think what's great about it too is we're going to see a lot of you in the future, and I'll have you promote your events upcoming in the end of the show here. But it's like we can't get enough of Mother Endless on the poster from an advertising standpoint. It's like, all right, whenever she comes into your area, it's like, boom, I'm there. So again, from a markability standpoint and you as a whole, it really shows within your work.
Gratitudes. I hope to travel now that the world is open once more and see many parts of this great country and furthermore the world and conquer it all.
Absolutely. And I also look at it from a stance too. I'm going to say this right now with your powers. I'm going to say it's kind of like you could teleport in a way just with that. I mean, with everything that's going on in the world, teleportation is never a thing. We've seen teleportation in wrestling. Is that another trick we could see? Maybe some teleportation, some little gadgetry, if you will.
All of my tricks are kept up my sleeves.
Okay. Hey, all right. No spoilers. I understand. That's why you're a smart human being. Now, another thing I got to ask you about is because we have so many, like I mentioned, great talents. One I wanted to ask you about because I've had her on the show. Man, we got the beautiful Nightmare Charlie Cruel, another up and comer, a great talent as well. That's another one from a markability standpoint and just in general. You and the beautiful Nightmare Charlie Cruel, another great athlete up and coming. And I got to say, another one very with a lot of heart. I'm going to say a lot of heart with Miss Charlie Cruel.
Indeed, and when her and I clashed at Goddesses of War, it was a beautiful match, I must say. Again, an unexpected amount of fight from such a small creature.
Okay, now I'm going to add to that because I got to say it's not the size of the fight in the dog, but the size of the dog in the fight. And I'm going to say from a stance when it comes to Charlie Cruel, like again, beautiful, absolutely, nightmare, absolutely. But it's one of those stances like you can't underestimate the underdog, but it's just like, all right, I can dig this because again, we were talking about clashes. Like Charlie Cruel, like for those who have not seen her, really another one on the rise to reiterate that point. But it's just like she's another one like yourself, Mother Endless, where it's like, all right, I could gravitate towards this because she's a cutie, but it's one of those things that's like, all right, she's ready to rip ass, she's ready to take names, and with her strikes and with her kicks, which we saw in you, again, very impressive showing from Miss Charlie Cruel.
She embraces violence in a way that is found in very few individuals.
I mean, sometimes again, we have to embrace the violence, embrace the darkness. I mean, to quote Lance Archer, which we see on AEW, I mean, sometimes everybody dies, and sometimes we get into that point where it's just like life or death. You know what I'm saying? It's either kill or be killed. It's survival of the fittest. It's again cliche and very apropos with the sentiments, but it's like, you know what? Sometimes it's a war when you step into that squared circle.
Absolutely, and that is what I love.
And I gotta say, Miss Scars and the Battle of War here, like I have seen again from your entrance and from everything from the fire to everything that you get into the ring. It's one of those things where I look at you and it's just sometimes I'm just like, all right, I'm terrified, but I'm intrigued. And I'm also kind of like, God dang, man, this woman right here, again, it's the toughness, the intestinal fortitude, if you will. It's one of those things where, again, the admirable aspect, but it's one of those things. It's why we can also appreciate professional wrestlers as a whole and everything that they put their bodies through.
Indeed, and professional wrestling is the outlet that I have found that most lends itself to my art form, which encompasses everything. It encompasses the body, it encompasses disciplining the body with fitness and strength. It encompasses the fight that is natural and is inside each and every one of us, and it encompasses the darkest parts of your mind.
I got to say this right now. In a day and age when we've seen The Undertaker make people cry and we've seen The Fiend and WWE make a lot of kids cry, it's one of those things where evoking emotions from a lot of the fans and a lot of people in general, it's one of those things where it's like, if you can captivate that, then you made it. And I could see that with you because, again, we're inspiring a lot of the newer generation to get into professional wrestling. But I think with you, when it comes to the stance, again, it's like, how does that make you feel? Like you're evoking emotions, you're inspiring a young ladies and a lot of great talent coming in. But at the same time, it's like, all right, I may make some kids cry on the way, but it's like, hey, I'm doing my job. So that's got to be a rewarding feeling for you.
Making children cry is easy. What is rewarding is the undying devotion of those who are willing to walk the way as Mother Endless walks the path.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Also very poetic and very majestic in those sentiments. I can appreciate that. That made my dark part of my soul smile a little bit on that. So thank you very much on that. It's one of those things I got to say as well. Like we've seen so many great characters, and a lot of people would attest to like what we see with AEW. There's Abaddon, who's another one that really like bites and everything. That I mean, I'm sure like this has been asked, but I got to say this because a lot of similarities between you and Abaddon. Again, it's the overall mystique factor, it's the mystery, but it's like here she is, she's biting people. There's the blood factor, and here's you spitting out the blood, the mask, the overall, what you have in your presentation. That would be something interesting for a lot of fans to see.
Everyone is interested to see that, whether it be us versus one another or us teaming up against another team. People recommend it daily.
You see, it's one of those things like we can appreciate too, because I mean, with your powers and with the biting ability, it's one of those things where it's like we're kind of like bloodthirsty, but it's also another thing where it's just like, all right, you know what, give me this, because again, from so many genres of movies, whether it be horror, whether it be music such as metal and death metal, there's just something about us that we just like from an artistic standpoint. It's just like we just want to see destruction, we want to say chaos, and we dare I say we want to see crush, kill, destroy. I think whether it be you two against each other as a tandem, that is what we would see from the two of you.
Absolutely. And as things begin to reopen and start to resurface, I think you will see more and more promotions that are geared towards this. Bloodstorm Pro, I hear, is a promotion in particular that is geared towards this darkness and this blood and this violence.
Hey, I'm going to look at it from a stance too. In popular culture, if we can have the Lost Boys and we can see just the influx that that has had, whether it be from a vampire movie standpoint, more vampire and also a little bit of comedic flow. I mean, you're kind of like the ones where you're sleeping in the cave, you're sleeping there. You know what I'm saying? Death by stereo. I could be all day with the quotes, but I mean, it's very Lost Boys esque, which we see blood in the tubs. We see everything. It's one of those things from an iconic imagery standpoint that we see in professional wrestling, much like we see in movies.
Well, I shall keep what is in my tub to myself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just saying, man, because there's a lot of stuff. Please, I got to choose my words wisely with the tub, but yeah, we'll keep that. Just opening up Pandora's box as we continue to speak. But no, I look at it from the stance too. It's one of those things. Like I said, wherever you go, it's going to be a special treat, and it's going to be a dark treat, and it's going to be again terrifying. But you know what I'm saying? I'm going to say this with you. Your phrase, you got to proceed with caution when it comes to you, Mother Endless. Like you're intrigued, but I got to proceed with caution.
I would recommend that anyone proceed with caution with women in general, but myself in particular.
Now, I got to say this from a war and violence standpoint. I mean, we got chairs, we got tables, we got a lot of stuff that we see. Dare I say, we got a lot of plunder, if you will, and it's a plethora of plunder. There's a POP for you, plethora of plunder. But it's one of those things, Mother Endless. It's just like when it comes to your weapons, whether it be just everything in general, I look forward just to see more of that destruction that you cause. I mean, from a hardcore standpoint and from an in-ring standpoint. Again, it's one of those things. It's like, all right, let's roll, let's kick ass, let's take some names, and let's let the bodies hit the floor, to quote Drowning Pool.
Absolutely. And I'm most certainly looking forward to things reopening and getting back into the violence.
I gotta say though, because you talk about everything opening up, and I know the world has gone through a lot. I gotta ask you. I mean, we also get that creative outlets of violence and different ways to cause violence. I gotta say, from a creative standpoint, in your own right, that noggin, that intelligence of yours has been showing. I'm sure you've concocted a lot of ways to create violence. So I'm gonna say this right now: a Mother Endless dangerous in the ring, but outside the ring during this time, it's got you ways to stew, and it got you ways to think of more ways to torture. So I mean, that's even more dangerous in your overall being.
Absolutely. And I found the time sequestered to be quite peaceful, as well as a time of great growth for myself. I focused upon my training, upon the solo discipline of gaining strength, brute strength, so that I can face opponents much larger than myself, even twice my size. I'm looking forward to surprising everyone as we go forward.
I'm going to say this: the grind never stops. The killing spree never stops killing, if you will, if that makes sense. But it's one of those things where it's like, from your stance, again, from working out and just doing what you do from the finesse standpoint, I'm going to say this about you, Mother Endless. I'm going to use this word. You got that finesse about you, that finesse, if you will.
Gratitudes.
Much appreciated. Please, it's my pleasure. And I also will say this before we actually do close this out. The overtures here, and I'm going to use this again, proceeding with caution, but with the utmost love and respect for you. Anytime you want to come back on the show, you are more than welcome to. I really enjoyed picking your brain and shooting the breeze with you about pro wrestling and what your career has done thus far. It's really been a true honor.
Your time is appreciated as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to say this. I cannot wait to see what comes from you in the future from the events and all the endeavors that we see from Mother Endless. But I got to say, from someone with your stature, with your prowess, and your overall presentation, we got a lot of people listening to this who want to get into professional wrestling and maybe pursue some of the dark arts that Mother Endless has found and, got up her sleeve, as you so eloquently put it before. What advice would you give those young ladies? And again, proceed with caution, that want to get into professional wrestling and maybe want to take a little something, something, little jab and Mother Endless, get in the ring with her.
I encourage each individual to walk the path, but to truly walk it, not just to step in the ring, but to make it their lifestyle, as it is a lifestyle pursuit. You must be disciplined in your training. Find a school, a place where you can go and become what it is to be a professional wrestler. Take your time, have patience with yourself, and gather all of the power that you can.
Wise words from a wise and articulate woman. And I got to say this about you, Mother Endless. I mentioned the name Lance Hoyt, but when he was in WWE as Vance Archer, here's what you're doing, because we talk about the art form. You are doing what he did back in the day on the ECW brand. You're creating the disaster pieces is what you're doing. You're not creating masterpieces. You're creating disaster pieces.
I will take that indeed as a compliment.
Hey, I'm just going to say again, here's what you do. Bob Ross had a show called The Joy of Painting. I'm going to say this is the joy of just painting, but mixed with a lot of chaos and destruction. You would put Bob Ross to shame. God rest his soul. Bob Ross, great man, intelligent man, but you would put Bob Ross to shame with your disaster pieces.
The joy of painting in blood and bodies.
See, right there. She knows. She knows. So, Mother Endless, before we close this out, please promote. I mean, there's so many forms of social media that we get to see you on. Please promote Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, your upcoming events where everybody can check you out in the upcoming weeks and months. Please go right ahead.
You can find all of the information about where I will be and where you can see me on my Instagram page. You can also search Mother Endless via the interwebs and find me on the Facebook and the Twitter and the YouTube.
All right. The links will be in the description for Mother Endless. I'm just going to say this right now. It's an easy Google search, because if you check out Mother Endless, there may be blood, there may be destruction, but I got to tell you, it's a great find for all professional wrestling, for independent wrestling as well. Support professional wrestling and support Mother Endless. And I got to say this right now. And I think you can agree with me, Mother Endless. Sometimes even the purest of souls, sometimes I got to embrace that darkness. The purest of souls can turn right into dark. Once that light switch, goes off, man, boom.
It is inside each and every one of us.
Beautifully said. And I'm going to say this right now, Mother Endless. It's a pleasure. It's a privilege. And thank you so much. And we will be back in the next edition of On the Mic with Mike. Mother Endless, greetings, salutations, and blessings. Thank you so much for your time.
Gratitudes.